I was searching on the internet for some Advent Christian history books, and I found some books that your father had published that were recently placed on Amazon for sale, and I ordered them and found your email address inside. And I emailed you and had all sorts of historical questions. And we had a very fascinating discussion, and I thought it would be great to invite you and discuss
Okay.
some of that history.
Okay. Thank you.
And who was your father, and why was he involved in the historical research? We'll start with that.
My father became the leading theologian in the Advent Christian Denomination. Um, he graduated from Bible College in 1951, pastored in uh, Quebec, Canada, in a city called Danville, then pastored in Springfield, Massachusetts. And Springfield, Massachusetts was about an hour away from where the Bible College had relocated. And he began teaching part-time at the Bible College and joined the staff full-time in 1964. He then went to Westminster Theological Seminary and got did his THM and then all the coursework for his THD. And his thesis for his THD, his doctorate in theology, surveyed two different types of apologetic systems within the Advent Christian denomination. One was a rationalistic based apologetics, where biblical teachings were filtered through logic and science and philosophy, and the other was a much more basically biblical authority first. And in doing that, he surveyed Advent Christian theologians, thinkers, not necessarily theologians, from the founding of the denomination through the 1950s. And so H.L. Hastings is one of the representatives of the biblical orientation, and Miles Grant was the representative of the more rationalistic type thing. Miles Grant had 5 pillars of truth, which included science, metaphysics, common sense, and the Bible. And for something to be true, it had to be true for all of them. And so the Bible was just one test of truth, whereas Hastings was it was the Bible. The Bible is our only rule of faith and practice. There is no creed but the Bible. And those were very firm. In fact, Hastings was the first president of the Advent Christian Denomination, but he only wanted to be known as Christian. And so he fought to keep it just the Christian Publication Society, but most people wanted it to be the Advent Christian.
And that has its roots in the Christian Connection movement, which we'll get into in a little bit.
Yes.
Let
We'll
me
talk
ask
about
you
that
this,
as well.
Digress just a hair back further. You mentioned your father's history. What sparked his? Was your grandfather, his father, involved in any of the Advent movement, Christian movements, any sort?
To my knowledge, both my father and my mother were the first believers in their respective families. So there's no further generation before then. So the Advent Christian Church was the first exposure to the faith that my father had.
And when did you start writing his historical treatises? And why?
Well, the first historical treatise he did was in Bible college, 1951, which was approximately a 70-page paper on Miles Grant, his life, his theological position, and how that influenced the denomination. His next historical work, was his doctoral thesis, which he started in probably 1966, and finished it in 1975, 76. That was a massive original research that he did. And so he knew well both the collection at Berkshire and the Jenks collection at Aurora, because he went through page after page after page of the world's crisis, pamphleteers. He collected tracts that were independently published. And one of the things he commented about his original research was that he found everything fascinating, because if he didn't capture it and share it, it might never ever be captured or shared, because it was that was just what he experienced.
Reminds me of somebody I know.
and Pastor Dean and I both live fairly close to this Aurora University, where the Jenks collection is found. And I have been going through the microfilms there, also the World's Crisis, but more in looking at the connections to the history of the Watchtower Society, and how some of those doctrines from and people from the Advent Christian Church had direct connections with Russell and his small group.